Hi, Jill Lee, founder and director of the Energy Healing Institute, and this is the second video in the series of 5 videos about the reasons not to be an energy healing practitioner. As with the first video and with the subsequent videos, I'll discuss the issue and then I'll offer up my thoughts around what to do to resolve it, because it's really not about telling you not to be a practitioner. It's telling you that there's some other thinking to be done to help support you in thriving should you choose to move forward with this idea. And I hear this over and over and over again when I speak with potential energy healing practitioners. They say something along the lines of, my whole life, people have always come to me and asked me for my help. They might add, I seem to have a lot of wisdom. They might add things like, I seem to know and be able to come up with solutions for people's problems that they can't come up with for themselves. All great things, but there's a problem. And here's what I want you to think about as you watch this video. Think about yourself and see, does this resonate? One is that may be signs that you are a caretaker. You are someone who takes on and holds other people's burdens, problems, and perhaps it's a role you've taken on since a very young age. Usually caretakers emerge from family systems where a parent has abdicated authority to a child who then takes care of things. And it just becomes an ingrained behavior that moves into adulthood, and it becomes who you think you are versus who you really are. And while it can be really nice, for example, I had a child. I was a caregiver for my son for many years and did things to smooth his way as a young child and supported him right on through his adulthood, into his adulthood. That's an appropriate role. But taking care of my next door neighbor every time she had a fight with her husband, not an appropriate role. So you may be in a position where this is just something that you have internalized. But if you're going to try and monetize that, you are going to burn out because you are going to attract people to you who may not be willing to actually do the work to take care of themselves. So, one of the questions that I often ask people who have this sort of caretaking pattern is, what data do you have that says that the advice you give is followed most of the time by the people who ask you for help? And in most cases, people say, that's a good point, because they come and they ask for help and they don't do anything. They just feel better because they kind of talked about it, which is not really solving anything, is it? The other question is, how appropriate are the people who are coming to ask for help? For example, you go to your hairdresser and you're getting a haircut and you're also working through their relationship issues with their mother because they are telling you all about it, or your manicurist or your massage therapist or whoever, anybody, someone on your team at work. Not your job, right? That's their job to manage those things. So there's a boundary issue where it's somehow acceptable for you to be in that role, even when the other person is actually supposed to be supporting you by filing your nails or cutting your hair or shampooing your hair or whatever it is. Thirdly, there's a real huge issue with role as a practitioner. Because as a practitioner, I don't solve anybody's problems. Not a single one of my clients in 35 years have I taken on the job of solving their problems. I've listened to what their concerns are. I may have pointed out, gee, you're a caretaker, or this sounds like perfectionism, or a lot of anxiety going on in your world, huh? Absolutely, my role. But to do anything about it beyond clearing energy and, in my case, offering tools and skills and practices for working on their own time to resolve things, that's it. I don't solve anything. I don't say, listen, you'd be less anxious if you worked at that job, or if you divorced your husband, or if you sent your kid to private school. No, no solutions. So the role of a practitioner is to facilitate a process and to stay on the right side of the box where the client is empowered to determine for themselves what actions they're going to take and what their next steps are. So, if you really want to move forward with being an energy practitioner or any kind of practitioner, you got some inner work to do. This is my suggestion. I'm not telling you what to do. This is my suggestion. If you do the inner work of addressing the part of you that is caretaker, which may come from, as I said, your family of origin, you may have had that role in your family system. What'll happen is you'll attract a ton of caretakers into your practice, and you will be an expert on helping them see where they are and offering them resources for doing that work for themselves. It also means you won't be burning out in your practice because you'll no longer be in the place where everybody's coming to you asking for help and you're carrying the burdens of the world on your shoulders. All good things. Think about the boundaries, what's appropriate and what's not. Think about this in relation to friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, clients, everyone. I often say to caretakers who are working their way out of that role, you'll know you're well on your way when someone comes to you, sits down with a problem, and shares and dumps all their stuff, and you can look back at them and say, gee, that sounds like a really tough thing. What steps are you taking to resolve your problem? That's when you know you're out of the pattern. And huge win. Oftentimes those people will sit back and say, gee, I don't know. And then you know they're not really necessarily looking to solve something, but you've just given them the opportunity to think it through for themselves. And what a gift. Again, remembering your role as a practitioner. Your role is not to advise or solve. Not there. Does not exist in the role of an energy healing practitioner. You're facilitating a process. You're shining a light on places that people may not be seeing within themselves. And you are clearing energy. That is your job. You solve nothing. You heal nothing. You're simply a facilitator and a high-paid trash collector. So that's my second video in the series. And stay tuned because the third will be coming up shortly.